sticking around with us, Internet. We are joined now by our august panel of experts. We have David Mercer. He's a former strategist. He's a Democratic strategist who's a former Deputy National Finance Director for the Democratic National Committee. And Ford O'Connell, the Republican flavor of the day. He's a former McCain-Palin presidential campaign advisor, and he is the chairman of Civic Forum PAC. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, good. Well, you won't be saying that after Ford takes out after you. Okay, so here's what I'm curious to do. As I was just telling the Internet, the 22nd, there's the next sort of the rubber game of a 3-game debate match between Rick Perry and Mitt Romney that's coming off. Now, I want you, let's start out, David, take your Democrat hat off for a second. And
I'll try. That could be tough.
It could be tough. We have a crowbar if you need any help. But take your Democrat hat off for a second and tell me, when you look at this race, does Rick Perry look like he has staying power? Is he going to be able to get through this? How's a week from now, when we're in Orlando talking about this, how's he going to be looking?
Well, first of all, we like to see it go as long as it takes. You're more than willing to have an independent hop in there. After spending all their money and then coming out for their convention and trying to take on Obama. But I think, look, what was interesting was seeing Michelle Bachmann last week come firing back on both Perry and Mitt Romney. And I think that, it's coming back and forth. I don't think, though, in all honesty, that Michelle Bachmann, with her burn rate, she's spending a lot of money because she hasn't been there before. So she's got to bring on a whole cadre of newcomers, educating them, learning curve. We also saw Ed Rollins just leave the campaign, which I think is a very hurtful thing to her. So I think we're going to see it come down to what was like in '08 in the Democratic side, where you had Hillary Clinton and Obama. You're going to have Rick Perry and you're going to have Mitt Romney going at it.
Ford, you've been to this dance before. Is that how this, you think, shapes up, that in next March we're still going to be talking about back and forth Romney Perry?
I think so. One, because of our new primary rules and the primary calendars in flux. So I'm actually going to agree with David for a second here.
Mark that down, Internet.
And I do think that it will be Perry and Romney, but where Perry's scoring points is a lot of Republicans don't like some of his views. In-state tuition for illegal immigrants, how he handled the HPV vaccine. But what they want is a bold, tough, principled chief executive, and he sort of has that card over Romney, who's seen as a little bit of a flip-flopper and somebody who will say anything to win the nomination. My advice to Rick Perry is stick to your guns, but you're going to have to soften a little bit of your language like you did on Social Security. Look, strong positions are good, but fiery language and strong verbiage plays to Romney, and also will keep Bachmann in the game long.
Okay, now, the Democrats are sort of two minds when they look at the Republican field. You can put your Democrat hat back on.
Never took it off.
See, now you tell me. Democrats are sort of two minds when they look at this Republican race, because you have Romney, who is more moderate here. Okay, so that's one thing. But Perry offers a sharper contrast. But if you look at the places where Perry's going to have trouble with getting his nomination, especially on illegal immigration, that's something that helps him in the general election. That's a thing that helps him win in places like Nevada, New Mexico, Colorado, Florida, must-win states for the president. So if you had your druthers, I know your druthers are that they fight it all the way out until about July 1st and then have a split convention. But if that weren't the case, if you had your druthers as a Democrat, which would you rather face, Romney or Perry?
Look, going with what Ford just said about the style of Rick Perry,
right.
It's a strong, bold, action-oriented.
Yes.
However, does that translate on the ground to action beyond the style question?
Right.
And I think, there's going to be some distinctions that are already being drawn out with regard to, does his style match up with substance? In the case of whether it's his job record, which is being subsidized, as we heard earlier, by food stamps because the wages are so low in Texas. There are a lot of jobs, but they're also being subsidized, whether it be by military contracts or Department of Transportation or others. Let me keep going.
Okay.
And
I want to give Mr. O'Connell a chance to rebut, because I saw his eyebrows start twitching.
Well, you keep saying the wages are low. Wages in Texas are on the rise, and it's actually 28th out of 51, including the District of Columbia. So that's not entirely true. But I do think that what we're seeing here between Romney and Perry is a drastic campaign style. Look, Romney is the guy that women sort of settle on when they marry. Rick Perry is kind of the guy that women want to take to the prom. The question for Perry is, can he move from the honeymoon phase to someone you want to marry? And if he can improve his debate style and be precise about his positions, I think he can do it. But again, I do like the fact that Mitt Romney has a good polished resume and a strong business background. So either one of them is going to be very tough for President Obama in this economy, given the fact that the unemployment rate.
Okay, now before we get in on that, I want to play a little game, fellas. As I was saying before, on the 22nd, we're going to have this debate down in Orlando, and a big component of this debate is we're going to let America ask questions of the candidates directly.
Well, it's a lot better than Wolf Blitzer.
Hey, I thought
Wolf was good.
I thought Brother Blitzer did a good job. I thought he was very good. He stayed out of the way and let the wrestling match wrestle. But we're going to bring America into the conversation with these YouTube videos. Thousands and thousands of people have already submitted their videos at youtube.com/Fox News. So here is what I would like, and we watched some yesterday. We'll see some more tomorrow, I promise. But here's what I'd like you guys to do. If you could ask one question of the Republican field, what would you ask? Let's start with the Democrat hat.
Can you spell middle class? Hardly mentioned. In 2 debates, it was mentioned twice. Okay? I want to know, can the Republicans spell middle class? And if they get that right, can they spell economic security and jobs after that?
But see, now, here's what I'll say, Internet, and I've seen some questions like this from people who are wearing their Democrat hats that get on there and say, you're no good, you bunch of no-good-nicks that don't like anybody. Those questions are easy to answer if you're a Republican candidate, because you say middle class. I am the middle class. I'm the heart of small businesses, and you can just go ahead and
Romney would have trouble saying that.
Well, depends on the neighborhood. Depends on your neighborhood what middle class is. Okay, what would you if you had your 30 seconds to ask Republican field? What would you ask?
How do you specifically go about creating jobs? How are you going to specifically improve the economy? Because at the end of the day, that's all that people care about. Everything else we talk about, the sort of poking and everything else is ancillary. Number one thing is how are we going to put Americans back to work, and how are we going to do it soon?
Okay.
That's right.
All right, well, you have.
Thank you.
That's twice in one segment. I can't believe it. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, but you have given the viewers out there in the internet land a great example of how to do this. So what you should do today, do it now, right after the show, please, is go to youtube.com/Fox News and submit your questions. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about President Obama's entitlement phobia, so stick around. As the president has consistently said, he does not believe that Social Security is a driver of our near and medium-term deficits. That was White House spokeswoman Amy Brundage in a statement to the Wall Street Journal. Gentlemen, David Mercer and Ford O'Connell, the question is, we saw from the Wall Street Journal today that the White House, and in other sources now, the White House has basically confirmed that when the president rolls out his deficit plan, he's not going to be taking on entitlement issues in any very substantial way. They've taken a lot of stuff off the table. Now, somewhere in Washington, Irkson Bowles is like weeping into his lunch plate. He just cannot believe that after he volunteered to serve on this bipartisan deficit commission, and they came out with all of these recommendations. And I've been listening to moderate Democrats on this show and in private for months now say, now you just wait. President Obama is going to come through with a bold deficit reduction package, and he's not now going to do it. He's not going to deal with Social Security at all. And on the issue of Medicare, it's becoming very clear that the only thing he's going to do is basically say, I already passed a health care law. There are provisions in there that allow us to save money. Let's expand on those and build that up. Why isn't your president, our president, David Mercer, taking on this issue?
Emphasizing our president,
yeah.
He is taking on the issue, and he did so in the debt ceiling debate, where we have the formation of a super committee to come up with the types of cuts that are necessary, including tax reform, including entitlement. And if they do not see their way to those cuts, we know there are triggers that will get pulled that will cut discretionary spending, both military and or otherwise. And so that is in play. Now, while that is in play, this president, our president, is focused on job creation and using a combination of infrastructure development or rebuilding our schools and or roads roads and build, bridges, in addition to tax cuts, to extend to the middle class so that we create a demand so that corporations see that uptick in demand and then start hiring in addition to that.
Ford, I've heard, I've watched in amazement as President Obama has let your party off the hook like a bajillion times by not taking that bold Clintonian move to the center on an issue like this. The Barack Obama I watched in 2008 was fast on his feet. He knew when there was an opening. There knew when he could get to the left or right of an opponent, be it Hillary Clinton or John McCain. He was nimble, fleet-footed. He was people credit him as a great speaker for his success. I credit him that he had great instincts in 2008. He really knew when to go and when not to go. He could have wiped out your team a bunch of times by taking a bold step to the center, but he has consistently refused to do this. Aren't you afraid that at some point he's going to lay you guys out with a sucker punch?
No, actually I'm not.
Okay.
Because welcome to the realities of a very tight electoral map. What I'm seeing here is, I'm going to borrow one of y'all's phrases, Obama's being held hostage by his own presidential ambitions to win a second term and by his own party's ambitions to hold the Senate. Look, if he gets rid of, he rightly knows in the discussions between Boehner that he recognizes that entitlement reform with Social Security and Medicare needs to be done, and we know that it can help with the deficit. That said, he knows that by holding on to it, okay, in case nothing gets done whatsoever on the jobs front or even just with the triggers, he knows that he can hold that card in Florida, particularly if he faces Rick Perry, because Rick Perry's so strong on it. Secondly, he knows that he wants to pass this jobs plan. He can't get it through if he gives it up on the deficit side. He has to hold it in his hand to play with his own party to push his jobs plan through. And that's really where we are. He's actually being held hostage by his own party and his own presidential ambitions.
Why doesn't he go bold ever? This is what I've been watching with the president. Is he just tired? Is he like all tuckered out from the first year in office?
I think he's being responsive to the party and to Americans in general, especially middle class Americans. And it's not a matter of tacking to the center or tacking to the right or tacking to the left. It is finding a path to solutions for the American middle class to have jobs and to create demand for us to get back on the road to economic prosperity. And in so doing, he is actually with that jobs plan and his joint session, his speech at the joint session of Congress, he laid out a bold vision for that. We're now waiting to see what Boehner does today, and I think they're going to come to the table. And I think I read somewhere that it was recommended that they meet in Blair House after they put their respective plans now on paper.
That's divided, huh?
Hopefully, look, we had a chance during the debt ceiling where Boehner ended up walking out, but they got close. It was $200 to $400 billion in tax cuts or raising of revenue that had Boehner walking away. But I think we may see them coming back again. And again, it's trying to not tack to center, right or left. It is to come down the path where there are solutions, bringing everybody together.
Well, I can tell you what Bill Clinton would have done, and he'd have sprinted right into that old center, and he would be whipping Republicans in the House right now. He would have a very effective argument. I watched the president go to swing states where he has dire job approval. These Quinnipiac numbers in Virginia that have him with 54% disapproval in Virginia, which was one of his shining moments of the 2008 campaign. Not just winning Virginia, but winning it big. With 54% disapproval, 40% job approval.
He's still on the matchup, so with Republicans,
but they're not
beating
famous
them.
Yet.
They're not famous
Rick
yet.
Perry's not famous yet.
And we have
his name ID's only at 66%, right. Only rising. So
right. Okay. So here's the question: for Republicans, when they get down to the issue of how much to oppose President Obama, isn't there the danger here that as Obama looks very weak, and we just heard from Congresswoman Elmers, that basically saying, I'm not afraid of him one whit, not one iota, because he's not popular in my district. He can come down here and yell all he wants, but I'm not going to listen to him. Don't you think that at some point Republicans are going to be tempted into overplaying their hand on all this stuff?
Well, I disagree with the Congresswoman. Obviously,
Okay.
She's a fresh woman. One thing about President Obama and all this, his approval's down, but he has a likability rating that's extremely high because he personifies the best in American exceptionalism. And frankly, if he's seen as being blocked while trying to do the right thing, Republicans will pay the price. So you have to give and take and have wise compromise. And I think David would agree with me on that.
I totally agree, and you're seeing evidence of it from No Labels and Howard Schultz from Starbucks. You saw it from Warren Buffett. You see it also from inside the party with Mike Lofgren just retiring, 28 years on the Hill, both House, Senate budget committees, retiring, saying he can't put up with the course that you say some Republicans may go, which is take Obama out at any cost, even if it's at the cost of the economy.
David, I agree with you, but what America does not want to see is compromise based on political convenience.
I totally agree.
They want to see wise compromise. And if we get that and it leads to jobs, then I think, everybody...
And then let everybody go into election year with having done the right thing and see who's best to lead the country.
The jobs and the lives of the American people come first before any election.
Well, I guess we are going to have this election after all, fellas. All right, thank you both for being